Solid geometry. So this topic does require memorizing some formulas, sorry to say. So we're going to go through each of them. So this is really all volume and surface area. Okay, so we have, I think, 7 different examples. Okay, so we'll start with all of the volume questions. So probably the easiest one is cube. Okay, so volume of a cube equals e to the third. Okay, and e equals edge length. So it's going to say like the edge length equals something. What is the volume? Okay, so our example here, it says, what is the volume of a cube with an edge length of 4? Okay, so we know edge is 4 to the third. And if we multiply out 4 to the third, so 4 times 4 times 4, we get an answer of 64. Okay, so that's our first formula that we need to know. And so really there, with all of these, honestly, if you know what the formula is, then we're just plugging in numbers and just multiplying some stuff out. It's not too hard, right? But the challenge is knowing the formulas. Okay, that's some of them are a little trickier to memorize than others. We started with the easiest one that we really have, which is cube equals edge to the third. Okay, so that's the first one. Okay, number 2, rectangular solid. That's an E. So the rectangular solid is just length times width times height. Okay, so it's just length, width, height, multiply them together. Okay, so the rectangular solid has a length 8, height 6, width 5. What is the volume, right? We're just plugging those in. So length, width, length 8, another one was 6, another one was 5. If we multiply those all together, we get 240. Okay, so the math part really pretty straightforward, right? Of just going through and just multiplying stuff together. So far, that's all you got to do. So there's 2 down. So rectangular solid, length times width times height. Okay, next one, cylinder. Okay, so from here on, we start getting a little trickier. The math part doesn't get that much trickier, I don't think, but you start having a few more things to remember, and they can start seeming similar. And yes, you do have to memorize them. Okay, so the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. So if they tell us radius is 2, height is 6, okay, then we can just go in and we know our formula is pi r squared h, right? So we've got pi, there's our radius squared times height, 6, okay, 2 squared is 4, right? We'll carry that 6 down. 4 times 6 is 24. Last I checked. And 24 pi, right? And that would be our answer, right? So really we just plugged it in. If you have any part of yourself that is thinking about pi equals 3.14, that's great. You're not wrong, but in geometry is you'll just see the answers in pi. It's not going to be 24 times 3.14. It's just 24 pi. Okay, so that was pi r squared h for volume of a cylinder. Okay, sphere. We'll just abbreviate with SPH, but this is a sphere. Is, okay, now the formulas are getting a little crazier. Nothing you can't handle though. 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, and so the order in which I'm doing these are the order in which I would be trying to memorize these formulas. You know, the more complicated ones, they may show up, but you know, really like the cube, rectangular, solid, cylinder, those are easier to memorize. Here they start getting a little more complex. So this is the order I would do it. Okay, so this one says diameter is 10. Okay, and that's all they tell you. Okay, and they want you to solve for this. Okay, so we want to remember from our work with circles that diameter is twice as long as radius. Okay, so that's important to know also for circle questions. Okay, so they're basically testing us on that as well before we even get into any of the calculations. So if diameter is 10, that means radius is 5. Okay, so we start plugging this guy in. 4/3 times pi times 5 to the third. Okay, and 5 to the third is 5 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5, 125. We'll carry the rest down. Okay, now it's starting to look a little more manageable, right? 4/3 pi times 125. Right, and so then we're just going to go 4/3 times 125. Okay, and if we go all through that, we end up getting 167 pi for our answer. Okay, so there we had to remember that diameter is twice as long as radius, and then again we're just really plugging this stuff in. So really it's just about knowing these formulas and then being able to plug in and multiply, and then know a little bit with exponents as far as squaring numbers or cubing numbers. Right, that will show up here a little bit. Sometimes people get confused about cubing numbers. You just multiply the original number into itself twice. All right. So that was volume of a sphere. And then we have volume of a cone. So this will be our last volume one. There's 5 volume questions or equations that we could possibly run into. Okay, so we start off with pi r squared, right, which is the formula for a circle, times h divided by 3. Okay, and then let's do a problem here. We'll say h is 6, r is 4. Okay, so start off with our pi r squared. So pi radius is 4, right? Times 4 squared times, it says h is 6. We divide that by 3. Okay. So already starting to look a little more manageable. Carry down our pi. 4 squared is 16. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Okay. We multiply 16 times 2 here. We'll get 32. And pi. So it's always the number first and then the pi. 32 pi. So there's our answer, right? So once we know the formula, and we just sort of plug this stuff in, there shouldn't be any place there where you really get tripped up on the math, right? It's all pretty straightforward. Continuing to practice these in the app, spending some time on your own, memorizing these formulas. You do that, there's no reason to miss these questions. I mean, if you don't know the formula, then you're just guessing. Just the nature of it. If you want to get these right, you got to take the time to memorize the formulas. Not too hard. Okay, and then we'll jump into surface area. Okay, so we'll go back to our friend cylinder. Okay, so on this one, cylinder equals pi r squared, again, that's the area of a circle, plus 2 pi rh. Okay. Again, I would memorize all of the volume ones first, right? Then I would mess with the surface area ones. Okay, and they say on this one, right, so we'll have a few more calculations, and that's not a big deal. These calculations aren't too hard. The height is 8, and the base has a diameter of 6. Okay, so that just means diameter equals 6. Don't let them throw you off just because they say base or something. Okay, diameter equals 6, right? And we know, we just talked about this, radius is half of diameter. So that means radius is going to be 3, right? Okay. So then we go into our formula. So we start off with pi r squared. Okay, so pi, we just found out that radius was 3 squared, right? There's the first part of the formula, plus there's a 2, and there's a pi, then there's radius, again that's 3, and then height, which we haven't used yet. Height is 8. Okay. There we go. So now we have something that we can work with a little bit. Okay. 3 squared is 9. So we'll say this is 9 pi plus, we've got this 3 times 8 here is 24. Okay. And times 2. 24 times 2 is 48 pi. Okay. And 9 pi plus 48 pi. Now we just got that simple addition to do. And we end up with 57 pi. Okay. So again, that tricky formula, right? That one doesn't just roll off the tongue, right? But we have surface area of a cylinder equals pi r squared plus 2 pi rh. All right, we want to dedicate that one to our memory, and we have one more surface area, and then we're done. Hopefully you're still here with me. Right? There's a lot of formulas to have to take in. But hopefully getting a better sense of how to do this, and just knowing that if you dedicate the time to memorize these formulas, which shouldn't take that much time, right? If you're just spending a couple minutes a day just testing yourself on it with some flashcards or something like that, you'll be there. Okay, surface area of the rectangular solid, okay, equals 2 length times width plus 2 width times height plus 2 length times height. Okay, now this one's actually easier to memorize than you might think, in that this whole formula is, it just 2 times, right, is they're just taking 2 of the 3 variables, right? Your variables are length, width, and height, and each time they're taking two of those variables that haven't been connected before, and then just adding them together, and you always have a 2 in front of it, right? There's only 3 different ways you can combine them: length times width, width times height, length times height. That's all there is to it. Okay, and then we got to go and plug it in. So our question is, what is the surface area of a rectangular solid with length 7, width 5, and height 8? Okay, and then we're just going to plug these guys in. Okay, we already got our formula, so it's 2 length width first, right? 2 times 7 times 5 plus 2 times width times height. 2 times 5 times 8 plus 2 times length times height. 2 times 7 times 8. Okay, right? So these 7 times 5 is 30. 35, sorry. 35 times 2 is 70. Okay, so we got 70 right there. The next one, 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 8 is 80. Okay, there's our 80. And this last one, 7 times 8 is 56. And 56 times 2 is 112. If we add all of those together, our final answer for surface area of this rectangular solid, in which the length was 7, the width was 5, the height was 8, is 262. Okay, so that's all you got to know for solid geometry, right? It's quite a few formulas, but I know that you're more than capable of doing it if you just put in the time to memorize these formulas. The math is really just plugging in a bunch of numbers and remembering that diameter is twice as big as radius. That might show up as well.